The phone rang while they were lowering his casket into the ground. I stood there in my black coat, the November wind cutting straight through me, clutching a single white rose that was already wilting in my cold fingers. Everyone else had stepped back, giving me that quiet, respectful space people give widows. I was supposed to be the last one to say goodbye. And then my phone vibrated against my hip, insistent. Like it knew something I didn't. I almost ignored it. But the screen showed Richard Marcus's office. And my stomach turned over. Marcus had been my husband's boss for 19 years. He'd spoken at the service just 20 minutes earlier, voice cracking, telling us all what a good man Marcus had been, how the company would never be the same. I thought maybe he was calling to offer condolences again, or to ask about the reception. I stepped away from the grave, heels sinking into the soft earth, and answered, "Evelyn." His voice was low, rushed. "You need to come to the office. Right now. You need to see this before they lock everything down." I remember the wind snatching my breath. "Richard, the burial's not even finished. It can't wait. Evie, please. I'm begging you. Come alone." He hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood there staring at the phone, the rose trembling in my hand, petals dropping onto the muddy ground like snow. My daughter, Claire, was watching me from a few yards away, eyes red, clutching her little boy's hand. I forced a smile that probably looked more like a grimace and mouthed, "Work thing. I'll meet you at the house." She nodded, trusting as always. I turned my back on my husband's open grave and walked to the car. The sound of the first shovel full of dirt hitting the casket, chasing me all the way. That was the moment everything I thought I knew about the last 33 years cracked clean in 2. Before that day, life had felt steady, safe, the kind of ordinary that people complain about until it's gone. Marcus and I had married young, 22 and 23, right out of college. He was tall, quiet, with gentle hands and a laugh that started slow and then took over his whole face. I worked part-time as a school librarian. He climbed the ladder at the insurance firm downtown. We bought the little blue house on Maplewood when Claire was 2 and our son, Nathan, was still a bump under my sweater. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. White picket fence, creaky 3rd stair, the kitchen window that stuck every spring. I could tell you the smell of every room. Lemon polish in the hallway, coffee and cinnamon in the kitchen, the faint cedar from the hope chest at the foot of our bed. Marcus left for work at 7:15 every morning. Kiss on my cheek, thermos in his hand. He'd text me around 10 just to say he loved me. Some days he brought home grocery store flowers wrapped in that crinkly plastic. On Fridays we ordered pizza and watched whatever movie the kids picked. Even when they got older and started rolling their eyes at us. He coached Nathan's baseball team even after his knees started giving him trouble. He built Claire a bookcase shaped like a tree when she went away to college. He was reliable. That was the word everyone used at the funeral. Reliable Marcus. Good man. The last 5 years had been harder. His blood pressure climbed no matter what the doctor tried. He started forgetting little things, where he put his keys, whether he'd taken his pills. I'd find him standing in the garage staring at nothing, like he'd walked in for a reason and the reason had just slipped away. The doctor said early onset dementia. Probably. Slow progression. We adjusted. I drove him to work on the bad days. Richard gave him lighter accounts, letting him come in late. Marcus hated the pity, but he smiled through it. Squeezed my hand across the truck console, and said, "We've got time, EV, we've got time." Then came the heart attack. It was sudden. He was in the yard raking leaves, stubborn as ever, refusing to let me hire the neighborhood boy. I found him on his knees by the maple we planted the year Nathan was born, one hand clutching his chest, the rake fallen beside him. By the time the ambulance got there, he was already gone. I am 58 years old. Just like that thought, the week between his death and the funeral was a fog of casseroles and sympathy. Cards and people telling me he was in a better place. I nodded, thanked them, and signed papers I barely read. I kept thinking, at least he didn't suffer long. At least he died at home, doing something he loved. At least I got to hold his hand while the paramedics worked. Even if he couldn't squeeze back, I never imagined there was anything left to take from me. But there was. I drove straight from the cemetery to the office building downtown, still in my black dress and heels, mascara streaked, dirt on the hem from the graveside. The security guard knew me, Marcus, and I had come to every Christmas party for 2 decades. He waved me through without a word, eyes soft with pity. Richard met me at the elevator on the 12th floor. He looked 10 years older than he had at the service, tie loosened, hair standing up like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. "EV," he whispered, pulling me into his office and shutting the door. Sit down. I stayed standing. What is this about, Richard? He didn't answer right away. He opened his drawer, pulled out a thick manila folder, and laid it on the desk like it was something radioactive. Marcus came to me 6 months ago. He said, voice so quiet I had to lean in. Asked me to witness a new power of attorney. Said his memory was getting worse. That he wanted to make sure everything was taken care of. In case. I felt the first prickle of cold down my spine. In case of what? Richard opened the folder. On top was a document with Marcus's shaking signature at the bottom. I recognized it immediately. His handwriting had started looping more in the last year. The letters leaning like tired trees. Next to his name was another signature I didn't recognize. And beneath that, in bold, durable power of attorney granting full financial and medical authority to Vanessa Caldwell. I stared at the name until the letters stopped making sense. Vanessa Caldwell was 20-9. She was the new junior account manager Marcus had been mentoring. She'd been to our house for the company barbecue last summer. She'd sat on my couch, drank my iced tea, and laughed at Marcus's terrible dad jokes. She was the woman who had been texting him at 11:47 p.m. for the past 8 months. I'd seen the notifications light up his phone screen. When he thought I was asleep, I'd told myself it was work, late claims, nothing more. Richard's voice sounded very far away. There's more, EV, a lot more. He turned the page, and that's when I saw what my husband had really been doing while I was making his doctor's appointments and cutting the pills in half so he wouldn't choke and falling asleep every night with my head on his chest, listening for the next heartbeat. He hadn't just given her power of attorney. He'd given her everything. Richard's finger trembled as he slid the next document toward me. A quitclaim deed. Our house. The little blue one on Maplewood with the crooked mailbox and the lilac bush Marcus planted the year Claire learned to ride a bike. Was no longer in our names. It had been transferred to Vanessa Caldwell. 4 months ago, Marcus had signed it with that same shaky hand. Below his signature was a notary stamp from a law office I'd never heard of. I felt the room tilt. I reached for the back of the chair to steady myself, but my fingers missed, and I just stood there swaying, the way you do when the world suddenly forgets gravity. There's a new will too, Richard whispered, dated 2 weeks before he died. Everything. Life insurance, retirement accounts, the savings we built for 33 years, goes to her. You and the kids get a letter. That's it. I heard myself make a sound. Not a cry, not a scream. Something smaller, like air leaking out of something that had been holding its breath for years. Richard kept talking. Softer now, like he was trying not to spook a wounded animal. Bank statements. Joint account drained in increments of $9,000. Always just under the amount that triggers a fraud alert. A second checking account I'd never seen, opened in both their names. Credit cards in my name that I'd never applied for. A safe deposit box, key-taped inside the folder with Vanessa's initials written in red ink. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. $287,000 gone. He told me he was protecting you, Richard said, voice cracking. Said if he ended up in a home, Medicaid would take the house anyway. Said this way you'd be taken care of. That Vanessa was family he trusted. I thought he meant she was handling paperwork, EV. I swear to God I didn't know the details. I only found out yesterday when legal sent the death notification and everything auto-transferred. I looked at him then, really looked. His eyes were red. He was shaking. This man had known my husband longer than I had, and he looked like someone had reached into his chest and pulled out something vital. I picked up the photograph that had slid out from between the pages. It was printed on regular paper, edges curled. Marcus and Vanessa on some pier I didn't recognize. Sunset behind them, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist like it belonged there. He was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not tired, not medicated. Alive. I turned the photo over. On the back, in his handwriting, for when I forget why I'm doing this. Love you always. I folded it once, twice, until it was a small hard square, and slipped it into my pocket like evidence. Richard was still talking, offering to call lawyers, the police, anyone. I heard none of it. All I could hear was the sound of the dirt hitting Marcus's casket, over and over, like a clock counting something I was only now starting to understand. I drove home on autopilot. The reception was already underway. Cars lining both sides of Maplewood. People in their Sunday best holding paper plates of ham and funeral potatoes, telling stories about what a good man Marcus had been. Claire met me at the door, eyes searching my face. Mom. Where did you go? Aunt Linda said you just left. I looked past her into our living room, our photographs on the mantel, the dent in the wall where Nathan threw a baseball when he was 9. Everything looked exactly the same, and nothing was. I have to make a phone call, I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, calm and flat. Give me 10 minutes. I went into Marcus's study, the one room I hadn't touched since he died. His coffee mug is still on the desk, half full, a ring dried into the wood, his glasses folded neatly beside the keyboard. I closed the door, leaned my back against it, and dialed the number I'd memorized from the bank statements. She answered on the second ring. Vanessa Caldwell. I don't know what I expected. A tremor. Guilt, maybe tears. But her voice was smooth, professional, like she'd been practicing. This is Evelyn Hart, I said. Silence, just breathing. I know everything, I told her. Power of attorney, the house, the money, all of it. Another beat, then, softly, Mrs. Hart, don't. I cut her off. Don't you dare say my name like you have the right. I heard her swallow. He was sick. He didn't want you to lose everything if stop. My voice didn't shake. I was surprised by that. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. You will meet me at the branch on 5th and Mercer with every document you have. You will sign whatever needs to be signed to put my house back in my name. You will close every account you opened with him. And then you will disappear from my life and my children's lives. Do you understand me? You don't know the whole story. She started. I know he's in the ground and you're living in a condo, my money paid for. I know that's enough. She started to cry then. Quiet, almost polite sobs. He loved me, she whispered. He said he'd leave you as soon as the diagnosis was official. He said you'd be relieved, that you were tired of being his nurse. I closed my eyes. Every night, I'd help him into bed when his legs wouldn't work. Every morning, I'd remind him what year it was. Every time, I kissed his forehead and told him it was okay, that I wasn't going anywhere. Relieved, I opened my eyes. 9 o'clock. I repeated, if you're not there, I will go to the police. And then to every news station in the state. Your choice. I hung up before she could answer. I stood there for a long time, listening to the murmur of voices in my living room, the clink of ice in glasses, someone laughing too loud at a story about Marcus teaching Nathan to fish. I opened his desk drawer. Inside was the spare key to the safe deposit box, exactly where he always kept it. I slipped it into my pocket next to the folded photograph. Then I smoothed my dress, wiped my face, and walked back out to play the grieving widow for the rest of the afternoon. But inside, something had already started moving. Quiet, cold, certain. Tomorrow, I will take my life back. Piece by piece. The next morning I woke before the sun. The house was too quiet. No sound of Marcus clearing his throat in the bathroom, no clink of his spoon against the oatmeal bowl, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the grandfather clock we bought the year Nathan started high school. I dressed like I was going to church. Navy skirt, cream blouse, low heels, hair pinned back, no makeup except a little lipstick so I wouldn't look dead myself. I put the folder Richard had given me into my good leather purse, the one Marcus gave me for our 30th anniversary. Then I took the spare key from my pocket and slipped it onto my keyring, right next to the house key that might not be mine much longer. Claire was still asleep on the couch, wrapped in one of Marcus's old cardigans. She'd cried herself out after the reception. I covered her with the afghan my mother crocheted and left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to handle some paperwork. Coffee's made. Love you. The bank on 5th and Mercer opened at 8:30. I was there at 8:15. Sitting in my car with the engine running so the heat would keep my hands from shaking. At 8:29, I saw her silver Honda pull into the lot. She parked 3 spaces away, sat for a full minute with both hands on the wheel, then got out. Vanessa looked smaller than I remembered. Hair in a low ponytail, no makeup, wearing a plain gray coat that swallowed her. She kept her eyes on the ground until she was 2 feet from me. Double quotes Mrs. Hart, she said, voice hoarse. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked inside. She followed. The branch manager, Mr. Patel, knew me. Marcus had golfed with him for years. I asked for a private conference room and the key to safe deposit box 418. Mr. Patel's eyes flicked to Vanessa, then back to me, questions he was too polite to ask. He led us down the hallway without a word. Inside the little room there was a table, 2 chairs, and the long metal box. I waited until the door clicked shut behind Mr. Patel. Open it, I said. Vanessa's fingers shook so badly she dropped the key twice. When the lid finally came up, the smell hit me first. Paper and Marcus's cologne, the one I bought him every Christmas. Inside were stacks of cash, maybe 30,000. A velvet pouch with my grandmother's diamond earrings I thought I'd lost. And a thick envelope with my name on it in Marcus's handwriting. I took the envelope. She didn't stop me. My hands were steadier than hers now. I opened it. Inside was a letter, 3 pages, and a second, smaller envelope marked Claire and Nathan, open after I'm gone. I started reading right there, standing up, while she sat twisting a tissue into knots. Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, and you know most of it. I'm sorry it doesn't feel big enough, but that's all I have left. It started 2 years ago. The forgetting got worse. I knew what was coming. I saw my father fade the same way. Angry, lost, a stranger wearing his face. I couldn't do that to you. I couldn't let you watch me disappear piece by piece and still have to wipe my chin and change my diapers. You deserved better. Vanessa was kind to me on the days I couldn't remember how to work the copier. She listened when I talked about you, about the kids. One night we worked late and I cried in the parking lot like a child. She held me. That was all it was at first. Then it wasn't. I told myself I was giving her the burden, not you. The money, the house, all of it, so you wouldn't be tied to a sick old man and a pile of medical bills. I told myself you'd be free, that you'd grieve and then live the life you put on hold for me. I see now how cowardly that was. I robbed you instead of trusting you to love me even when I was broken. The earrings are for Claire. There's a college fund for Nathan's boy in the velvet pouch too. The cash is what's left after I paid Vanessa's rent so she wouldn't leave before I got things settled. I was a fool. Forgive me if you can. Hate me if you have to. Just don't let this break you. You were always the strongest thing I ever touched. Marcus. I folded the letter slowly and put it back in my purse. My eyes were dry. I don't know why. Vanessa was crying quietly, shoulders shaking. I looked at her for a long time. She was 29, my daughter's age. I wondered if Claire would ever look as small and wrecked as this girl did right now. Stand up. I said. She did. I took the stacks of cash and put them back in the box. I took the velvet pouch and slipped it into my purse. Then I closed the lid and locked it. Mr. Patel will call the police if anything else is missing, I told her. Now we're going to the conference room and you're going to sign every reversal document the bank's attorney drew up this morning. You will deed the house back to me. You will renounce the will. You will close every account you share with my husband. And then you will leave this city and never contact my children. She nodded, tears dripping off her chin. And Vanessa. She looked up. The next time a married man tells you his wife will be relieved when he leaves her, remember this moment. Remember what relief feels like when it's your whole life being dismantled by someone who claims to love you. Her face crumpled. She didn't argue. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of signatures and notary stamps and Mr. Patel bringing us coffee neither of us drank. When it was done, the house was mine again. The accounts were frozen pending probate, but at least they weren't hers. The will was contested. Richard had already connected me with the best estate lawyer in the state. When we walked out into the cold November sunshine, Vanessa stopped at her car and turned to me. I really did love him, she whispered. I looked at her for a long moment. So did I said. That's why this hurts you too. She got in her car and drove away. I never saw her again. I didn't go home right away. I drove to the cemetery instead, parked on the service road, and walked across the frosted grass to the fresh mound of dirt that was still waiting for its headstone. Someone had left a spray of white roses from the funeral. The petals were already brown at the edges. I sat down on the cold ground in my good navy skirt and opened Marcus's letter again. I read it twice more, slowly, letting every word settle like stones in my chest. Then I spoke out loud, the way I used to when he fell asleep on the couch and I'd whisper things I was too shy to say when he was awake. You thought you were saving me, I said to the ground, but you never asked what I wanted to be saved from. It was never you, Marcus. It was never the sickness or the forgetting. It was losing you, and you took that choice away from me. The wind carried my words off toward the bare trees. I would have sat beside your bed for 10 years if that's what we were given. I would have learned how to change catheters and puree food and sing the hymns you forgot the words to. I would have done it gladly, because it would have meant you were still breathing next to me. A sob finally broke loose then, raw and ugly. I pressed my forehead to the earth and let it come. All the tears I hadn't shed at the funeral because I was too busy being strong for everyone else. When it passed, I felt hollowed out, but cleaner somehow. I stood up, brushed the dirt from my coat, and made a promise right there between the graves. I'm going to fix this, I told him, not for revenge, for the life we actually built. For the children we raised. And when it's done, I'll come back and tell you how it ends. The next weeks were war. Quiet and polite on the surface. Brutal underneath. The lawyer, Richard found. Margaret O'Coy was a small, elegant woman with a voice like velvet wrapped around steel. She took one look at the documents and said, "Elder financial abuse, undue influence, lack of capacity. We're going to tear this apart." We filed emergency motions. We froze every account. We put a lis pendens on the house, so Vanessa couldn't sell it even if the deed was still clouded. Margaret subpoenaed Marcus's medical records, every visit, every prescription, every note about his declining memory. She deposed Richard, who cried on the stand and told the judge he'd never have witnessed anything if he'd known Marcus wasn't in his right mind. The story started leaking. Of course, first whispers at church, then someone at the beauty shop recognized Vanessa's name, then the local paper ran a short piece. Local widow fights to reclaim home after husband's secret transfer. They didn't name Vanessa, lawsuit pending, but in a town this size, everyone knew. Claire and Nathan were furious at first, not at me, at their father. Nathan punched the kitchen wall so hard he broke 2 knuckles. Claire wouldn't say Marcus's name for days. She just kept scrubbing floors that were already clean. I let them rage. I listened. I held them when they finally cried for the father they thought they had. One night Nathan asked, voice small, "Did you ever love him, Mom?" After what he did, I was folding laundry on the kitchen table, matching tiny socks for his son. I stopped and looked at my boy, 28 years old. Eyes red like when he was 6, and scraped his knee. "I loved him the day he carried you in from the car, asleep on his shoulder." I said, "I loved him when he worked double shifts so I could stay home with you kids. I loved him when he forgot what year it was and still remembered to call me my Evie." Love doesn't vanish because someone hurts you, Nathan. It just gets heavy. You learn how to carry it differently. He nodded, slow, and came around the table to put his head on my shoulder like he was 6 again. The hearing was set for the week before Christmas. Vanessa's lawyer tried to paint Marcus as competent, in love, making rational choices. Margaret played the deposition of Marcus's neurologist, describing moderate to severe cognitive impairment. She showed bank footage of Vanessa helping Marcus withdraw cash when he could barely sign his name. She read the love letter he wrote to Vanessa the same week he forgot Claire's birthday. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes and no patience for nonsense, ruled from the bench. Will invalidated. Power of attorney revoked. All assets returned to the estate, house deeded solely to me. And because Marcus had died before the fraud was complete, the life insurance and retirement accounts came back to Vanessa stood up when it was over. She looked thin, pale, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Our eyes met across the courtroom. She mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't nod. I didn't forgive her. Not then. I just turned and walked out with my children on either side of me. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft and silent. Claire took my hand. "What happens now, Mom?" "Now," I said, watching the flakes melt on my glove, "we go home." Christmas came and went quietly that year. No big tree. No strings of lights along the gutters, like Marcus used to insist on putting up the day after Thanksgiving, even when his knees creaked and he had to lean on the ladder too long. Claire and Nathan came over on Christmas Eve with little Marcus, my grandson, in his red reindeer sweater. We ate soup from the same pot my mother used, opened a few gifts, sang one carol off-key. And nobody mentioned the empty chair at the head of the table. Some silences are kinder than words. January was for paperwork and phone calls and learning how to be a widow in earnest. The insurance money came through. The retirement accounts Margaret sent the final decree in a crisp white envelope. Everything that had been taken was restored, plus interest. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the numbers until they stopped meaning anything. Money can buy back a house, but it can't buy back the mornings Marcus used to hum while making coffee, or the way he'd rest his chin on top of my head when we washed dishes together. I paid off the mortgage anyway. One less thing to worry about. In February the headstone was finally set. Simple gray granite, his name and dates, and the line we picked out together years ago when we thought we had decades left. He loved well. I went alone for the first time. I stood there in my boots and wool coat while the wind whipped my scarf loose. I laid a single white rose, same as the funeral, and spoke out loud again. I kept my promise. I told him, "It's fixed. The house is mine. The kids are safe. You don't get to take that from us, even from down there." Then, softer, "But I miss you anyway. Isn't that foolish?" The wind didn't answer. Spring crept in slowly. The lilacs bloomed purple against the fence like they always did. I found myself talking to the house the way I used to talk to Marcus, reminding the stove when it clicked too loud, scolding the garden hose for kinking. Normal sounded different now, but it was still mine. Claire started spending more nights at the house. She said the apartment felt too quiet. One night in April, she came into the kitchen carrying a box of Marcus's things she'd found in the attic: old baseball gloves, yellowed love letters I wrote him in college, a stack of birthday cards she'd drawn with crayons when she was small. We spread them across the table like a deck of cards from another lifetime. She held up a photograph. The four of us at the lake. Maybe 15 years ago. Marcus grinning with sunburned shoulders, me laughing so hard my eyes were slitted, Nathan on his shoulders, Claire hanging off his arm like a monkey. I hated him for a while, Claire whispered, then I just missed him. How do you do both at the same time? I touched her cheek. You carry both, sweetheart. That's what grown-up love is. It's big enough for the ugly parts and the beautiful ones. She nodded, tears sliding quiet. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Have you forgiven him? I thought about it, really thought, while the clock ticked and the refrigerator hummed. I've forgiven the man who wrote me that letter in the safe deposit box. I said finally, the one who was scared and sick and trying to protect me the only way he knew how, even if it was wrong. That man I can forgive. The part of him that chose her over us day after day, that part still stings. Maybe it always will. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Claire. It means I'm not letting it own me anymore. She leaned her head on my shoulder the way she did when she was 5. In May, I got a letter forwarded from Margaret's office. Plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper and a cashier's check for $1,000, every penny of the cash from the safe deposit box, plus what looked like the sale of her car. The note was short. Mrs. Hart, I left the state like you asked. I'm in school now, paying my own way. I sold everything I could. This is what's left of what I took. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed to give something back. I'm sorry, it doesn't feel big enough either. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. V. I held that check for 3 days. Then I endorsed it over to the local Alzheimer's Association with a note, in memory of Marcus Hart, who was lost long before he died. Let someone else's family get the help we never knew to ask for. Summer came warm and slow. I painted the kitchen, the soft yellow Marcus always said made my eyes look pretty. I turned his study into a guest room, new curtains, new bedspread, the smell of cedar finally fading. I planted tomatoes in the backyard and watched them swell red the way he used to, kneeling in the dirt with his old radio playing baseball. One Sunday in July, Nathan brought his little boy over and we sat on the porch drinking lemonade while the sprinklers hissed across the lawn. The baby toddled barefoot in the grass, squealing at butterflies. Nathan looked at me sideways. Are you doing okay, Mom? Really? I watched my grandson chase sunlight and felt something loosen in my chest, like a fist I'd been holding for months, finally opening. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm still here. The house is still here. You kids are still here. That's more than some people get. He smiled, the first real one I'd seen from him in a year, and bumped my shoulder with his. Dad would be proud of you. I let that settle, tasted it, and decided I could live with it. Autumn again. The leaves turned the color of fire. I turned 60 the week the first frost came. Claire threw me a small party, just family, cake from the bakery downtown, balloons tied to the porch rail. We laughed until we cried, telling stories about Marcus, the good ones, the silly ones, the ones that made us ache in the best way. When everyone went home, and the house was quiet again, I poured a small glass of the bourbon he kept on the top shelf for special occasions. I took it out to the backyard and sat under the maple we planted the year Nathan was born. The stars were sharp and close. I raised the glass to the dark. 233 years, I said. The real ones. Not the lie at the end. The real ones. I drank. It burned warm all the way down. Then I went inside, locked the door, and slept better than I had in 2 years. I still live in the little blue house on Maplewood. The lilacs bloom every spring. The third stair still creaks, and sometimes, when the wind moves through the maple just right, I swear I hear Marcus humming the way he did on Sunday mornings. I never hated him. I hated what fear made him do. There's a difference. Some of you have written to me quiet messages, late at night asking how I forgave. I didn't forgive so he could rest easy. I forgave so I could wake up without that weight on my chest, so my children could remember their father's laugh without flinching. Hurts don't disappear. They just stop owning the room. If you're carrying something heavy tonight, a betrayal, a secret, a grave you still talk to, Hear this from a woman who sat in the dirt and learned how to stand back up. You are allowed to grieve the person you lost and still love the person they were before the hurt. Both things can be true. And you, my dear, are still allowed to live. Take care of your hearts. I'll see you in the next one.